Greetings, my name is Appo Jabarian. I'm the TV host for USA Armenian Life TV program. I have the honor and pleasure to host today the founding chairman of a groundbreaking American Armenian organization called the American Armenian National Security Institute, AANSI, AANSI. Please, I'd like to encourage you to visit AANSI.org, www.aansi.org. The American Armenian National Security Institute is groundbreaking in many ways. For the first time ever in the history of the American Armenian diaspora, there is a bridge organization that is empowering the American Armenian community to get into a working partnership with U.S. defense and foreign policy establishment to foster a stronger military, economic, and political alliance between the United States of America and the Republic of Armenia, longtime allies. So I'd like to mention the fact that the American Armenian National Security Institute recently carried out, jointly with USA Armenian Life, the second educational and journalistic mission to the Republic of Armenia. I'd like to mention the fact that Major General, U.S. Army Major General retired Mark MacCarley has served as Deputy Commander of TRADOC of the U.S. Army, Training and Doctrination. And he's also a very successful attorney practicing in three districts, California, Washington, D.C., and New York. General MacCarley, welcome to USA Armenian Life TV on AMGA.
Thank you, Appo. I always appreciate the invitation, and I hope I can explain a bit about the mission and importance of AANSI and a little bit of the history of how it came to be that many great leaders, those who are concerned about the fate of Armenia and certainly ARTSOC, came together to put this organization not only on paper, but to put it front and center as one of the vital and dynamic organizations that's focused specifically on the sovereignty and the continued viability of the republics, the twin republics of Armenia and ARTSOC.
Can you please tell our viewers about the second journalistic and education mission to Armenia by AANSI?
No question about it. I think, Appo, that it would be worth a minute or so of your viewers' time to sort of discuss the history and what took place before our second journalistic mission last July. As you touched upon, AANSI came into being very shortly after the 2020 war, the 44-day war, and so many, not only in the Armenian community, the Armenian American community, but freedom-loving peoples in the United States and around the world saw that tragedy and wanted to help. And out of that frustration and desire to do something, to focus on a country that has given so much to the world in terms of the creativity and the industriousness of its people, out of those ashes came AANSI, the American Armenian National Security Institute. And we have, over the last 2 years, moved forward really, quite frankly, aggressively along three lines. What I say, you can't take the military out of a person even though they are retired, under what we call three lines of effort. And the first is education. And what education means is that we get out the message about the challenges facing the twin republics, and as well how people around the globe, especially in the United States, can assist. and assist in a way that perhaps is more direct and involved than perhaps participating in a demonstration or rally in which the outrageous and horrific conduct of the Azeris is condemned. So we went forward with AANSI first on that line of effort of education. The second is humanitarian assistance. At our first banquet year, it'll make it almost a year and a month, we raised a good sum of money, and we contributed that money to the war veterans in Artsakh. There was a real need. There continues to be a need, not only for those who were crippled or maimed as a result of that war in 2020, and I should say that we should incorporate and include those who suffered grievous injuries during the conflict as it re-erupted earlier this summer. And so that is to help those who have sacrificed the most for the preservation of Armenia and Artsakh as sovereign and free entities. The third line of effort, which we're definitely going to focus on in and at our second banquet, is the establishment of a humanitarian support brigade, what we call the AANSI Humanitarian Support Brigade. Now, I have to say right at the outset that we're not discussing mercenaries, those who join for the excitement of combat or conflict. What we're talking about is an organization, a collection of those who are concerned about the survival of Artsakh and Armenia, who come together, who receive specific training in such subjects as medicine, mass casualty medicine, in areas such as communications, delivery of food, water, and all those things that are necessary for the republics at time of crisis. Now, that crisis could be a re-engagement with Azerbaijan if Azerbaijan decides once again to engage in outrageous, unlawful, and horrific conduct. It could also, and the Humanitarian Brigade could also be employed and will be employed to support efforts on the part of the twin republics in response to natural disasters such as earthquakes and other catastrophes that have beset the twin republics over the last millennium.
This is a groundbreaking idea, General, the formation of the first ever of its type humanitarian brigade to Armenia. Now, before we go any further, we talk any further on the humanitarian brigade, can you please tell us briefly so that we can share with our viewers some of the photographs of the AANSI, AANSI, American Armenian National Security Institute, second educational and journalistic mission?
Sure. As I was working up to the second journalistic mission, this was an opportunity to view the conflict at close range, meaning that I made it a point with my team to visit several of the points of conflict, of combat engagement between Armenia and the forces of Azerbaijan.
In this photograph, what do we see?
So the first photograph, sort of to set the theme, is that I and one of my fellow Army general officers, Scott Eflant, were in a bunker. And that bunker is situated...
He's also retired, correct?
Yeah, he is retired, just recently retired. And that bunker sits on what we call the line of conflict. And that bunker is no more than 300 meters from the location of a significant number of Azerbaijan forces.
What is this second photograph?
And the second photograph, once again, is we're up at the forward part of that defensive position. And like all those who are trained in military subjects, we're trying to get what we call the lay of the land and evaluate and analyze if something were to take place and the Azeris were to launch an attack. And I should footnote this because indeed a month and a half after we left that particular location close to the Sunak region, the exact thing that we were concerned about took place. The Azeris crossed and tried to engage our forces, or the Armenian forces, on that line of contact.
In this photograph, we see Colonel Arman Magurchan, the military, the defense attaché of the Republic of Armenia in Washington, D.C. How about this next photograph?
I think for the following photographs, once again, we emphasize the importance of understanding the conflict. Now, to put all this together, we are not in any way suggesting that this humanitarian brigade, which I'm sure that you'll ask me a considerable number of questions in the next few minutes, it has nothing to do with introducing folks from America, Armenian Americans, Americans, French, whichever and whomever desires to protect the sovereignty and the freedom of Armenia and Artsakh, the only two nations in that particular part of the world that have anything even closely resembling a democratic government. Now, those governments aren't perfect, but they're a heck of a lot better than what we see in every single other neighbor in that region. So why we go to these particular battle positions, once again, is part of the educational process, so that when we have conversations, when we have seminars in the United States, both at the university level, in programs such as yours, we will see ourselves, we have what could be and is firsthand understanding of some of the tactical challenges that we see when in Armenia during the course of our second educational mission. Because remember, that's part of the charter of ANSI, is education. And in order to educate, you must understand, you must learn. And that is the reason that we took advantage of the opportunity afforded us by the Ministry of Defense. It was an escort. We were escorted. Of course, we have no direct or even indirect relationship with the Ministry of Defense of Armenia of Artsakh, but the ministry certainly understands that what we're trying to do ultimately benefits the country, and the Ministry of Defense, from our particular position, is favorably inclined to assist us. So we went out there, and that's what that picture shows. It shows those members of the Armenian forces who are moving out at that time, moving to defensive positions.
General MacCarley, thank you. In the aftermath of the 44-day anti-Armenian aggression by Azerbaijan, Turkey, and ISIS, Islamic State terrorist mercenaries, and after so much losses in terms of human lives and the casualties of war like numbering in the thousands, sadly, and loss of huge territory, what positive, what encouraging signs do you see in light of the inception of the American Armenian National Security Institute? Can you please share with our viewers some of the positive developments in terms of positively impacting the strategic relations between the Republic of Armenia and the United States of America, longtime allies since the First World War?
Certainly. What we see, and the advantage to ANSI and its participation and engagement in Armenia and Artsakh, is that with those who are members, their enthusiasm and, quite frankly, their commitment to the cause of the preservation of the democratic republics, the twin republics, that has energized, and what we see has energized those in positions of power and influence in the United States. And what we've seen just in the last 4 months or so, now whether we are the absolute cause of this current development, I can't say. But I will say that we have made valuable contributions by working with our elected officials and to, once again, use that term, educate them as to the the importance of supporting Armenia and Artsakh. So all the effort that we put in, the assistance that we've gained from our membership, our wide and valued membership, all is focused on that mission of putting Armenia and Artsakh front and center as pivotal players in the challenge, the geopolitical challenges that we see in the Caucasus. And if you want to get even more relevant, the challenges that we see in the current conflict in Ukraine. The common theme between the twin republics and Ukraine, which is the topic of the day, is the preservation of each country's respective right to be free and to make their own destinies.
In the case of the Armenian nation, by that I mean the vast Armenian diaspora and the Armenian population in the twin Armenian republics. Like any other nation, it is the birthright of the Armenian nation to do everything in their capacity to maintain and enhance Armenia's and Artsakh's sovereignty, independence, and defense. Is this a realistic national aspiration for the Armenian people?
Appo, that's almost an intuitive, sort of an implied, it's a question that provides its own answer. And the answer is quite simply, absolutely yes. That's the prerogative, and that is the whole reason, the reason for the existence of a nation is firstly that it remain free and that it decides its own destiny as an independent entity in the realm of countries around the world. So absolutely, Armenia and Artsakh have a right to their own, not only destiny, but their right to survive and to prosper in this world. And that's the further function of AANSI to, in a small way, and hopefully that way will enlarge as AANSI becomes even more engaged in Armenia and Artsakh. And that is the function of bringing to the forefront and bringing to the table and bringing to those who make the decisions in the United States, once again, to emphasize this is and these are two countries that deserve the support of the United States. And I think we've begun to see some positive developments in the last couple of months. Our Secretary of State has certainly had the opportunity to converse, some might say embrace, the Armenian message as represented by senior officials from Armenia. Our Secretary of Defense has done the same sort of thing with the Minister of Defense in Armenia and embraced him as well. And that is a statement, that's a very positive statement to the people of Armenia that they have not been forsaken. Now, Armenia has multiple, as we say, geopolitical challenges, most related to the fact that it was a long-standing, since 1923, has been a part of the Soviet Union. And of course, that complicates all sorts of political relationships in the area. But it's very important as Armenia matures. It has only been independent as a result of the breakup of the Soviet Union for what, 30-odd years, 31, 32 years. And with that, AANSI provides, as one of many organizations, but I think AANSI has a uniqueness about it because it focuses only on the sovereignty, the survival, and when you say survival, that also implies the ability of the twin republics to defend themselves against aggression. So we're beginning to see how all these little factors come together to support those countries in times of need. That's what we're doing.
General, I must acknowledge the fact that you've been living and working very, very hard as a top volunteer in the American Armenian National Security Institute. In the shadow of humility, had there been another chairman of a similar organization, and with the onslaught, in a positive way, with the onslaught of many, many strategic positive developments, I would have not been surprised if you had decided to issue a press release at every step of the way, but you haven't done that. You have continued working very hard in the shadow of humility, and many, many TV viewers and USA Armenian Life and the American Armenian media readers and viewers have noticed so many strategic accomplishments on the level of a strategic alliance, political, economic, and military between the United States of America and the Republic of Armenia. So where do we go from here? How do we express more support for a sustainable rendering of education services, like you have mentioned many times before? Education, education, education. So what can the American Armenian community do to further the mission of the American Armenian National Security Institute, AANSI?
You know, I've spent a little bit of time thinking about that question. You had cued me that it was going to come as a hardball. You were going to throw it very hard at me because it gets down to the essence of why we have ANSI and why we put ANSI, the great patriots, Armenian Americans and Armenian Americans and people around the world who have joined ANSI. And the way to answer that question is to look at what took place within the last month and a half. All your viewers recognize and remember that not more than a month and a half ago, we had another flare-up conflict, once again reignited, unprovoked attack on the part of Azerbaijan. Azeri forces crossed the line of contact, shot missiles and cannon, and flew their drones into Armenian positions, and 1,000 or so Armenian young men and women died as a result of that initiation of conflict where there was absolutely no justification on the part of Azerbaijan in doing so. It was a clear violation of international law. Now, here's what happened. Here in America, out of deep frustration, those members of the Armenian community and those who support Armenia and its defense, and Artsakh, of course, they gathered up and they once again rose, as we say, came out to the streets and protested, and they made conscientious decisions to protest in major cities, try to get the message in front of media. And to some extent, there was success as a result of that action, but I ask you, how much of that is remembered? Because when you demonstrate on the streets, that is a valued activity because it puts the question and the challenge in front, hopefully, of those who are opinion makers and those who are decision makers. However, what those who are out there, those activists who are trying to do the right thing, both in support of international law and the defense, for some, their mother country, and for others, that country that symbolizes democracy in the Caucasus, there's a huge amount of frustration because the question that comes out is, what can we do? We've already protested. We've got a message out there. And then 3 or 4 days later, it's forgotten because some other big challenge, perhaps an entertainer who stubs his foot, that becomes the most important news on national news channels and in social media. So what ANSI does is it says, here is the opportunity. We have the Humanitarian Support Brigade. If you really want to do something, you're in America, you're in France, you're in Germany, but you want to take positive action and go that next step, and that next step is that step beyond the rallies and the protests, and you want to get involved, ANSI is affording you the opportunity to do something. This is what we call, in my business, direct action. Not sitting on the sidelines, and that's no criticism. Please, please, please do not consider this criticism of those who, with great courage, protested the actions of Azerbaijan, whether down on Wilshire Boulevard here in Los Angeles or in New York or Chicago or Michigan, other areas of concentration of Armenian Americans. But this is an opportunity to say we're going to do something, we're going to go through the training, we're going to prepare ourselves. If something happens in Armenia, whether it's a natural or a man-made disaster, when I say man-made, that certainly implies some sort of war or conflict initiated by Azerbaijan, we are preparing ourselves to go over there and provide immediate assistance in an organized fashion. And we've had before, and as you said, this is the first instance with the support brigade, before there have been individuals who have volunteered. Some have made it over to Armenia. It's always been a matter of individuals. Some have been successful in getting over there. And then the key question once they arrive is whether they can be successfully integrated into those support organizations where their skills have some value. But what we're doing is we're putting that all together so that if you are focused on assisting Armenia, that this is an issue deep down in your heart, that it is an emotional driver for you, then by golly, nothing is more important and nothing will satisfy that desire to do good than to be a participant, to be a member of the support brigade. You will go through the rigors of training, but you will be prepared, and there will be a place for you in Armenia. Of course, this is completely civilian. This is not military, notwithstanding what I did in the past. But there will be a place for you to help Armenia in times of crisis, both war and during, as I mentioned earlier in this program, such things as earthquakes or any other natural disasters. Could be a flood. Those things that have affected Armenia over the last, for as long as it's been in existence.
General MacCarley, thank you for inspiring work, groundbreaking work. Thank you for being a visionary leader and also Vice President of AANSI administration. I'd like to thank several visionary supporters, and it is very important that many of us support the upcoming AANSI, American Armenian National Security Institute banquet on December the 1st, 2022 at 6 p.m. It's a Thursday at the world-famous, award-winning Taglian Complex in Hollywood. So please call 818-241-5800 and visit the website www.aansi.org to reserve your tickets, and together we can move and shake mountains with the help of our faith and vision.
And I should say, as we wrap this up, that AANSI is not supported by the U.S. government or any governmental agency here or around the world. It receives absolutely no funds from the Republic of Armenia or ARTSOC. That is why the banquet is so critically important, because the brigade and everything else that AANSI does, the educational missions, the charitable and humanitarian contributions to military hospitals and civilian hospitals in those twin republics, it's all funded by our contributors. And one of our biggest events to raise money, got to be frank and honest about this, is our banquet. This will be our second banquet. We were very successful last year. Last year allowed us to make the humanitarian contribution and as well to fund the exploratory trip to Armenia and to negotiate so that the Humanitarian Brigade has a place where it can make significant contributions to the welfare of Armenia. But we're dependent upon our many friends and those who believe so deeply in their hearts about the importance of Armenia ARTSOC to the world and to world peace.
Please join us on December the 1st. Be part of groundbreaking historic development. AANSI is unprecedented in its nature and the type of work that it does as an advocacy and educational nonprofit tax-exempt organization. Join many visionary supporters, join visionary founder, U.S. Army Major General retired Mark MacCarley. See you on December the 1st.